Hi, so this will be lesson 4 of our unit, which is the last lesson of the unit. And once again, we're talking about triangles. So, in the last lesson, we talked about mid segments of triangles, where if we had midpoints on two sides of our triangles, we connected them, we formed a mid segment, and we talked about the properties of those. Today, however, we're going to be talking about something a little different. Again, it looks a little weird, but it's not bad by any means. We're going to be talking about something called a median, the median of a triangle. The median of a triangle is formed, once again, by picking a side of a triangle. Let's just pick this one, for example, and drawing the midpoint. If I draw a midpoint, then that means, these two sides have to be the same. But the difference is, instead of like with the mid segments, me going and drawing another midpoint, instead I'm going to look at the corner on the opposite end, and then I'm going to connect that line. Well, as you can see, I didn't connect it too well, but that's okay. Let's scoot that over a little bit. There we go. Okay. Also, with that red. Here. So there. So that is called a median. So far, it doesn't do anything more than just split the triangle in half. But when we start adding other medians, so like if I go to the midpoint of this side, which again would cause this to be in two equal halves, and I draw a dot on the opposite corner, well, let's connect that real quick. And let's also change the color. Boom. So there's another median. Now, if you notice, these kind of cross right here. And we'll get to that in a second. But last, let's go ahead and draw this last median, which I drew in the corner first, but it doesn't matter which one you draw. And again, these have to be the same. And now let's connect them. And as long as you do it correctly, which I kind of got lucky, all of the points, all these lines should meet in the same spot right here. So what this point that we just kind of formed with all these lines is called the centroid, which for some reason it thinks is not spelled correctly, but it is. Now the centroid, which again is this spot right here, is the point where all the medians meet. And while there's some other fancy properties about it, we don't care about that too much in this lesson. But for now, we need the centroid in order to use the properties. So what the centroid does is it puts a point on exactly the way this ends up working out. Like if we took this green line, for example, if this was, say, 3, well, then this section here has to be 6. And if we looked at the red, which I could color code this a bit better, if this was 2, then this would have to be 4. And if this was 4, well, then this would have to be 8. So if I were to, let's pretend that this is one of my medians for a second, okay? That centroid, that purple point there, is about here. And what it essentially is doing is, if we were to cut this into thirds, 3 equal parts, the centroid goes through one of those thirds. So it splits it up into a 1/3 section and a 2/3 section. Or an easy way to think about it is it splits it up into 2 parts, a bigger part and a smaller part. And the bigger part is always twice the length of the small part. And typically we need at least 2 of the medians in order to look at the centroid, but usually you'll see about 3. So if I draw another triangle real quick, and let's just, I don't want to use that one. I should use a line tool. That'll save me a little bit of time there. Hang on just a second. Okay. Boom. And I feel like I have this just a little bit off, but that's okay. Boom. Okay. So there's our centroid. Now, again, remember when we drew these centroids here, when we drew the medians, again, we used the midpoint. So as per the last time, if let's say right here, let's say this part was 3, well, so would this be? These two would share the same lengths. Go a different color for that one. And these two would share the same lengths. So the main thing I want to talk about, because I feel like people are fine with dealing with midpoints, is that if we take a look at the median itself, again, this smaller portion of this green line is always going to be half the length of this. So if this was, let's say, 10, this would have to be 5. That's our, we had 5, that's 5. And if this was, say, 12, well, then this would be 6. Because again, the bigger portion of that line is twice as much as the smaller one. And while I usually tell you all not to look at how it looks when you do your math, with how I set these up, you can pretty safely look at it and say, hey, if that side's smaller, then it's the part that's going to be half the length of the other, but either way. Now for this one, let's just do a 4. So if this is 4, then this longer blue end has to be 8. And to be honest, that's pretty much it. So if you have any questions, just let me know.